Under the shimmering lights of what was meant to be a fairy tale wedding, a silent storm was already brewing. Behind the elegant smiles, a broken love story was bleeding out its final breath. Nicole and Ted, once inseparable, found themselves standing on opposite sides of a line that could never be crossed again. But what should have been a quiet, private heartbreak twisted into something far darker. One unexpected act shattered the fragile thread between them and unleashed a chain reaction of jealousy, betrayal, and vengeance. This night wasn't just a wedding, it was the beginning of a war that no one saw coming. The ballroom was bathed in a thin layer of warm golden light, but it wasn't enough to dissolve the undercurrents quietly surging through everyone present. Soft music floated in the air, mingling with the guests' laughter, yet for Ted and Nicole, it became a sound that didn't belong. The divorce papers in their hands felt like a cold, clean cut through every memory they had shared. Ted stood there, forcing a smile he himself could barely believe. To everyone else, he was calm and composed, but only he could feel the freezing void within. Nicole walked slowly, her heels striking the marble floor with a hollow sound, each step slicing deeper into Ted's heart. When their eyes met, there was no longer the warmth of the past, only confusion, helplessness, and distance. Her gaze no longer sought him as a safe harbor, it looked upon something that once belonged to her but now lay in ruins. He felt it more sharply than anyone, and the blood in his veins seemed ready to burst. Outside, the wedding unfolded like a perfect play. Smitty and Martin exchanged loving glances in what was supposed to be a moment of pure happiness. Applause filled the air, fireworks lit the night, champagne glasses chimed like joyful heartbeats. But inside Nicole, a storm raged. Every smile she saw mocked the crumbling reality of her own life. Her marriage with Ted had ended with cold legal documents, and now she stood at another wedding like a prisoner shackled to a past she could not escape. She left before the cake was cut, not out of simple emotion, but because she felt suffocated, as if the air itself had been sucked out of the room. Ted watched her walk away, feeling as if something had clamped around his throat. In that moment, every resolution, every logical reason he'd built crumbled. He knew what they had was broken, but he couldn't bear the thought of Nicole being lost to him forever. What consumed him wasn't just love, it was wounded pride, self-inflicted punishment, the agony of being shut out from a life he once believed was his. In the cold white light of the hotel hallway, Nicole stood still for a long moment, as if wrestling with a decision even she couldn't explain. She knew exactly where her feet were taking her, to the room of the man she had signed away forever. She knew it might be a mistake, a cut that would go even deeper. But the emptiness in her chest was too wide, too heavy. She just wanted something to hold on to, even if only for one night. As her fingers brushed against the wooden door, she had no idea that not far away, Leslie was watching every move with icy eyes. Leslie had been there for a while. She hadn't come to celebrate. She came to witness an ending. Her gaze carried no sympathy, only jealousy swelling like a storm beneath a calm sea. To her, Nicole wasn't just the woman who once had Ted. She was the obstacle, the name that stood in the way of every quiet plan. Over the past days, Leslie had been pulling strings, moving pieces. She had patiently watched the cracks between Ted and Nicole like a hunter waiting for its prey to falter. And now, as Nicole walked alone down the hallway, Leslie knew her moment had come. The door opened. Light spilled out across the floor like a blade cutting through the night. Nicole stepped in, her heart pounding wildly like someone lost in her own maze. Ted stood there, stunned, as if seeing a ghost of something once his but now far away. She didn't speak. Neither did he. But the silence between them was heavier than any words could ever be. In that instant, between two people who once meant everything to each other, a fragile thread still lingered, a thread that could snap or pull them both deeper into a trap. Step by step, the distance between them shrank. The past and present hovered on the verge of colliding. But Leslie would not allow it. She pressed her finger to the fire alarm with a cold, quiet satisfaction. Instantly, the blaring alarm shattered the night. Red lights flashed like blood, and the shrill ringing ripped through the thick silence. Nicole flinched, Ted stepped back. Their emotions snapped like an overstretched string. The hallway erupted in chaos as guests ran in every direction. But Leslie didn't flee. She remained in the shadows, watching them with frozen eyes as their fateful moment was torn apart. In that instant, she wasn't just a jealous third party, she was the puppeteer, the one who had set in motion a chain of destruction. Leslie knew exactly what she was doing. A single act could unleash a tidal wave in two already fractured souls. Nicole fled the room amid the chaos. The sirens, the shouting, the frantic footsteps, it all blurred into a single, overwhelming noise. But in her head, only one word echoed: escape. She felt like a criminal, like someone who had stepped into forbidden territory. She didn't know if it was guilt or fear that gripped her, but it seeped deep into her veins, tangling every thought. Ted stayed behind, fists clenched, teeth grinding until he tasted blood. He felt as if something precious had just slipped beyond his grasp forever. In the days that followed, the chaos didn't end with the alarm. It spread like an oil spill. Rumors began to circulate. Leslie carefully planted bits of information, casting Nicole as the weak, emotional woman who couldn't let go of a failed marriage. Ted found himself trapped between gossip, self-loathing, and the corrosive jealousy Leslie had quietly ignited. He began to doubt everything, even the feelings he once thought were unshakable. Nicole grew colder and quieter than ever. She no longer stood in brightly lit rooms with the same unshakable confidence. She moved like someone broken, but inside, a quiet fire burned. She understood now, Leslie wasn't merely jealous. She was playing a game. And whether Nicole liked it or not, she was already at its center. Pain was no longer just an emotion, it had become a motive. A silent, persistent, dangerous force. Leslie continued her careful advance. She charmed people around Ted, her sweet words a sharp knife wrapped in velvet. She didn't strike Nicole directly, she suffocated her by stripping away her trust, her reputation, and every close relationship she had left. Every rumor, every skeptical glance at parties or meetings became another dagger aimed at Nicole. And the cruelest part, no one stood by her side. Ted, too, was dragged into another kind of spiral. He began to lose control. Work pressure, whispers behind his back, and the image of Nicole in that hallway all fused into something toxic. He couldn't tell what was real anymore, and what was Leslie's manipulation. Rage, pride, and hurt tore him apart, turning him into a distorted version of himself. All three, Ted, Nicole, and Leslie, were now trapped in a web of schemes and emotions. None of them could walk away without leaving deep wounds behind. Leslie stood in control, but her hatred was a blade that could turn on her. Nicole, once the victim, was slowly becoming someone ready to strike back. And Ted, torn between two forces, had lost his sense of direction entirely. From what seemed like a harmless fire alarm, everything had spiraled into an uncontrollable chain of ruin. That wedding had not been the beginning of joy, it was the opening shot of a silent war. A battlefield without guns, but with pride, twisted love, jealousy, and hatred. Each carried unhealed wounds, burning desires, and a single choice that could destroy everything. And from that night on, there would be no way back. Every step they took would carry the weight of the dark ending set in motion the moment Leslie pressed her finger on that fire alarm. The night that began with polished smiles and promises of forever ended in a storm of unanswered questions and hollow silence. What lingered wasn't the warmth of a celebration but the cold sting of betrayal that no one could unfeel. Ted stood alone in the dark corridor, the sound of distant alarms still echoing like the heartbeat of a tragedy that had only just begun. Every step Nicole took that night had carved a deeper rift between who she once was and the person she had become, trapped between the past she thought she wanted to forget and a future she no longer recognized. And somewhere beyond the walls of the hotel, Leslie moved like a shadow, feeding on the chaos she had so carefully set in motion. No one screamed. No one confessed. But beneath the silence, something irreparable had cracked open. Trust, once broken, did not bleed, it rotted. The wedding that should have sealed a union now marked the birth of a war built on bruised pride and carefully hidden wounds. There were no clean exits anymore, no gentle goodbyes. The people who once shared dreams now carried knives behind their backs, waiting for the moment to strike. And the cruelest truth of all was that no one was entirely innocent. Each of them had played their part in building this quiet disaster. As the last light in the hallway flickered out, the story of Ted, Nicole, and Leslie did not end, it twisted into something far more dangerous. The pain, once silent, would soon find its voice. And when it did, it would not whisper. It would burn everything in its way.